This episode is brought to you by Batiste Dry Shampoo. Whether you're on the go, at the gym, or getting ready for a night out, Batiste has a dry shampoo for you. Refresh with over 10 signature fragrances. Or try Batiste Hint of Color, a tinted dry shampoo that seamlessly blends with your hair. Need an extra boost? Try Batiste Dry Shampoo with added benefits like volumizing, texturizing, and more. Buy Batiste now, in-store or online at your nearest retailer.
Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby.
I don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
And it really feels like we are here on Katz and Cosby. Boy, oh boy, we know that there have been 2 assassination attempts against former President Trump. And tonight, some really frightening news that this guy from Alaska is facing 22 counts threats against 6 Supreme Court justices, saying he wants to kill them and kill their families. This is enormous news. John is not with us right now. He may be joining us later. And we have with us in the studio, Tony Carbonetti, of course, former chief of staff for then the great Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Tony, this is scary stuff. And this is what all this rhetoric that we're hearing from many people, especially on the left, is absolutely frightening. This guy apparently, according to new reports, was a big Democratic donor, at least a supporter of Democrats, vocalizing. We also hear some of the people saying the same thing, that Trump's a threat to democracy. And now we have a president who's had 2 assassination attempts, and now we have Supreme Court justices and their families that are worried for their lives. This is so dangerous.
I mean, thank God they were unsuccessful attempts. You know, it's worries you to think about what kind of shape the country would be in right now if, God forbid, one of them was successful. And now you have Supreme Court justices. Look, there's going to be more. Okay, there's the wave we're in right now, the social media, the 24/7 news cycles. You're ginning up the crazies. People have to take a step back. And there has to be someone that says, enough already. Look at what happened in 1968. I just watched that documentary on CNN.
And guess what? RFK didn't get any Secret Service protection until recently.
How do you deny? You know there's people out there. There's crazies out there that are fueled by this internet. There's the conspiracy theorists. There's the right-wing nuts, the left-wing nuts. You know, these people they're fueled up, sitting for 12 hours, and the Secret Service doesn't find them.
Yeah, you're talking about the second assassin.
Second attempt.
Right.
So this guy got himself so twirled up that he sat there waiting for 12 hours, and he didn't even know he was coming, right? He wasn't even sure the president would be there, or the ex-president would be there. Okay, that's the mind you're dealing with.
And you know the scary thing is,
how do you defend this?
And the scary thing is, Democrats were asked on Monday, do you regret calling Trump a threat to democracy? Or in this case, maybe going after the Supreme Court. And in the case, at least on Trump so far, they said, no, he is a threat to democracy. You have a president who has had 2 assassination attempts. And now you're looking at this. This is dangerous. This is reckless. And this is saying to me, what, they're going to win at all costs?
Yes.
What, they want him to be killed? I mean, I'm just saying it is scary.
They don't care how.
It is scary.
Let one of them step up and say, okay, let's tone the rhetoric back.
And
let's win this on the merits. They haven't said let's win on the merits.
Yeah, they've doubled down. That's what's so scary. Well, joining us now is Professor Alan Dershowitz, of course, the great Harvard Law School professor emeritus, also best-selling author of War Against the Jews. Professor Dershowitz, this is really frightening, this new news, that this guy has now been arrested for threatening 6 Supreme Court justices. He looks like he has liberal tendencies, and he amped up his comments right after the Supreme Court came down on the immunity issue, which favored Trump.
Look, let's be very clear. There are no threats to democracy from either candidate. If elections are fair and elections take place, nobody is threatening democracy because we have our system of checks and balances. And there were threats to democracy. People thought back at the beginning of the Republic, during the Civil War. We can deal with those kinds of threats if they are electoral. What we can't deal with is assassinations. And we're going to see more of it. When you see people like Professor Lawrence Tribe talking about Trump, if you shoot at him, you must shoot to kill. Or Chuck Schumer threatening justices of the Supreme Court, standing in front of the Supreme Court and threatening them. You know, they're going to say they didn't mean physical threats, but when you have these crazies listening, they listen and they hear what they want to hear. So we have to agree to cut back the rhetoric. And if we don't do it, there are going to be more, and some of them will be successful. Look how close the first assassin came to killing President Trump. I'm in an airplane now on the way to hear President Trump's speech to a Jewish group, and I'm going to meet him and talk to him, and I'm sure this issue will come up.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it is so dangerous, Professor. That's what's so scary is that, they have come. Look how close it was in Butler, Pennsylvania. And look how close, as Tony was just talking about, the guy laying in wait for 12 hours in Florida. And now you have this guy. You know what I also thought of, Professor, is Justice Kavanaugh. Remember, the guy was loaded for bear outside his house.
A gun and a knife. He could have come so close to doing it. Look. The only threat to democracy is not in an election. It's in an assassination. The only threats to democracy come from people with attempt to try to kill our leaders. And that's why we have to redouble our efforts in the Secret Service. The Secret Service failed both times. They're patting themselves on the back because they had one brilliant Secret Service agent who spotted a gun and then that woman who took pictures. Yeah, but how do you let a guy with his record be for 12 hours in the bushes without 10 Secret Service agents coming upon him immediately? It's just unthinkable. And the Secret Service just hasn't done the right job. It's a matter of luck that nobody so far has been killed, and we can't trust on luck. That's the real threat to democracy, not who gets elected.
Yeah, absolutely. Professor, before I also let you go, I'm sure you have seen this, that some members of the squad, AOC, for example, and then Bernie Sanders in the Senate, have said that maybe there should be a stopping of arms to Israel. They are saying that Israel violated international law with what happened with these amazing pager.
Did AOC's pager explode?
I know a little about international law. Israel complied completely with international law. They went after communication devices that are used by terrorists. If the people put their terrorist communication devices near children, that's on them. And Israel has a complete right to do that. I hope they will continue to do that. And I hope they will continue to assassinate leaders of terrorist organizations to prevent them from killing truly innocent people. And it's not a violation of international law. It's exactly a compliance with international law. But I haven't heard AOC speak much about the violations of international law that occur every day from Hezbollah and Hamas and other organizations. She's one-sided, and Bernie Sanders is one-sided. But my biggest criticism comes now for Canada, the gutless country to our north that refused to even vote against the UN resolution yesterday that said Israel has no right to defend itself. Canada abstained. New Zealand voted for it. Ireland voted for it. And it's pretty despicable when allies of the United States are willing to say that Israel should surrender and subject itself to genocide, which is what happens if Israel doesn't have the arms necessary to defend itself.
Yeah, it is stunning. And you're seeing also, as you talk about the UN, putting out that message, and the fact that they are actually pointing the finger at Israel. Think about how brilliant that was. I mean, that was a major message. And you've got Iran, who is now hacking. You probably saw this, hacking the Trump team and giving information to Biden. As you know all too well, the person who, the group that sponsors Hezbollah is Iran, the country. It's the head of the snake. So what, they're supposed to turn a blind eye?
And Iran wants Trump to lose the election, obviously. They would also like to see Trump assassinated. I have no doubt about that. And they are our enemy. They are the new Nazis of from the 1930s that tried to take over the whole world. Iran has taken over now virtually every country in the Middle East, from Lebanon to Iraq to Syria, and we're not stopping them. The Obama administration facilitated them, gave them money and resources to continue that terrorism.
Right.
And
We
are
gave them
to blame.
Iraq. I mean,
Yeah, and we gave them Iraq. Yeah.
You know, and by the way, you know, right now they're funding Hezbollah. They're fighting. You know, they're fighting through Hamas with Israel, right? And they're attacking U.S. Cyber. So they're planting. What I'm trying to say, I'm losing my train of thought. I apologize, Alan. Is Iran is our enemy. We cannot let Iran go nuclear. Biden, Harris will do it, and then the rest of the Middle East will follow. It's the worst thing we could ever let happen.
And it's even more than the Middle East. They now have their sights set on Sudan, Darfur, where they are cooperating in a real genocide that's taken place. They're not going to be satisfied until only their brand of Islam is acceptable, not only throughout the Middle East, but throughout Europe. And they are the greatest threat that the world faces.
So
today.
why would we let them go
the
nuclear?
United Nations, yeah, we shouldn't. And the United
Of course
Nations,
we shouldn't.
You know, instead of giving them $4 billion in exchange for 5 hostages, what the administration should have said was, unless you get the hostages back to us in 48 hours, we are bombing your nuclear reactor and we're going to assassinate your leaders. You don't give people something in exchange. Democracy doesn't in exchange for hostages. What you do is you threaten to destroy them. And I guarantee you that they would have capitulated and freed the hostages.
The problem
That's the only
is,
thing they understand.
But the problem is, you guys, this administration doesn't have the will. I mean, it's clear.
I agree with you. I don't think they have the will, and you know, we'll see what happens. But right now, the world is in great danger from Iran. They are the villains of the world, and it's not only Israel, it's not only the United States, it's not only Europe, not only Africa. It's basically the whole world is now at risk as the result of Iran's export of terrorism.
Yeah, absolutely. Professor Dershowitz, give the president our best. I know you said you're going to see President Trump soon. Thank you. We love you. Thank you for being here, Professor. Wow. And joining us now, Tony, is Andy Biggs, Congressman from the great state of Arizona. Congressman, first, your reaction to the stunning news. Now it's a guy who's been arrested for threatening 6 Supreme Court justices and their families, like horrible rhetoric saying he wants to kill them. It comes right after, obviously, these 2 horrible assassination attempts against President Trump. And yet the vitriol, it seems like on the left, has not clamped down.
No, in fact, they're actually stepping up their vitriol because, you know, they're inciting some violence or threats of violence. So say this guy gets arrested for this. Don't forget that previously you had a threat against Justice Kavanaugh. Previously you had a left wing shoot up a baseball field that hit Steve Scalise and attacked literally probably a dozen or more members of Congress who are Republicans. And then you get to this thing with Donald Trump and where they're going after President Trump. And I've gone back and looked over some of the rhetoric that the left has said. They talk about eliminating Donald Trump. Joe Biden said you got to put him in the bullseye. Hillary Clinton, just even after that second assassination attempt, she continues to say that he is the biggest threat since basically Adolf Hitler and Nazism. You have the MSNBC putting people on, their own commentators saying that he is like Mussolini. He is like Hitler. And I'll just give you one more because this is why you should defund NPR. I listen to some classical music. It's a blessing and a curse, but because it's only on NPR if you're listening to it on the radio. And what do I get? An NPR news story, and the reporter, ostensible reporter, says Donald Trump is a racist liar. That was supposed to be a reported story. This is the type of vitriol and rhetoric that seems to give license for crazies to go after and try to assassinate conservatives, Supreme Court justices, elected officials, Donald Trump. It's absolutely irresponsible.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if you saw this report. I'm going to throw it out there because it is all over the internet. Matt Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida, came out and he made some statement that somebody, a very close DHS official, told him, he said, that these are the threats against Trump, that there are 5 assassination teams, he said, that are already in the country, sleeper cells, which is scary, especially with an open border. He's saying 4 foreign teams, 2 domestic teams. We know that Iran's been trying to get them, but how big of the threat do you think is there against President Trump right now, Congressman?
I think it's real. I think it's big. I've heard the same information that Rep. Gates has. I think it's from the same source, and I can tell you that these are credible. These are credible, and it shouldn't be just us, Matt Gaetz and I, and other members, just a few other members of Congress that know about this. This better be on the radar of the police apparatus of the government. I'm talking Secret Service, Homeland Security. They need to be protecting and step up their protection of President Trump.
Let me ask you, Congressman, because you said you've heard the same. What have you heard? Just can you sort of just tell us in terms of who this source is, and are they credible, and what did you hear?
The source is credible, and I can't really go much more than that because it was given to me confidentially, and I think it's going to come out publicly in the not too distant future. But it's that there's 5 teams in the U.S. And I'm trying to remember the countries. I think Ukraine, Iran, and I can't remember the other 3, but Russia as well. So that's what we have heard. And regardless of, I believe my source is credible. I believe what he's telling me is credible from what he knows. Whether it's credible or not, what needs to happen is Secret Service needs to investigate and protect Donald Trump. Step it up.
And is that a senior DHS official? That's what Matt Gaetz was saying. Is that sort of the same level of source or credibility?
Yes.
It is. Is it active duty or is it someone retired?
I can't say. I can just tell you that this individual is active.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Wow. Tony Carbonetti, you have a question for the congressman.
Well, no, it kind of scares me if you think there's real assassination teams out there when some, random high school nerd and some wandering nut job got kind of close. If you're telling me there's real trained teams out there, that's kind of scary,
It's really frightening, and this is what we have. And I got this information late today, not too long before I was with you. So,
but if these amateurs can get this close, you're telling me there's trained professionals here, we should be worried.
Well, that's exactly right. Imagine Butler if you would have had a trained assassin team there of Hezbollah or Hamas or even Tren de Aragua, who is very well armed, and they had shown up there at Butler armed and ready to try to take out President Trump. That's the kind of thing. And I don't, I know this sounds inflammatory, but what has to happen is Secret Service and DHS needs to do its stuff, investigate and protect this president. But, and I would say that, they need to protect all of the high-profile folks that are receiving threats for sure. But Donald Trump is probably the most threatened individual and one of the most high-profile individuals in the world today, and they need to protect him. And you're right, it's incredibly concerning. If
you've had these 2 breaches with amateurs, what could the trained professionals do?
Yeah, and that guy was sitting there for 12 hours, as you point out, the guy in Florida. I mean, think about if it was a trained person or multiple people. It was just one individual. And thank goodness, he left, like you said, and the Secret Service guy spotted him. What does this say to you about how important it is just to beef up security, to your point, Congressman? Because that is really scary. That was my first thought is, what if it was an Iranian team down there at the golf course?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. I mean, you get 2 guys who ostensibly were acting alone, and they made mistakes and they acted like amateurs, but they managed to get close enough to cause to potentially kill and assassinate President Trump. If I can't tell you, that's what I'm saying. If you imagine Butler and how many other people might have died. And the assassination of President Trump.
Mistakes in Butler they never should have let him get back up. once you go down, once they take the president down below the that fire, the bulletproof glass, they should have brought him right down. They never should have let him get back up.
Well, they also should have had a team on the roof. I mean, that's the other thing.
That goes without saying.
I mean,
you stand on that stage,
right.
you look, it's the first thing you see.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let me, to all this point, Congressman, your thoughts, because we're hearing now the Secret Service told local police they were going to be on the roof. They weren't on the roof. They didn't check the perimeter around the golf course. What's going on here? And we have I heard Ron Rowe, who's the new director there, the acting director at Secret Service, the other day patting himself on the back and patting Biden on the back for security and patting Mayorkas because DHS oversees it. Is there more to the story, Congressman?
I think there's a lot more to the story. I mean, when we had our unofficial hearing with Gates and Mills and Eli Crane, myself, and Chip Roy, what we had testimony come out that Secret Service agents didn't show up for the morning briefing day of. They didn't take the communications radios offered to them by the locals so that everybody could stay in communication. They didn't keep a decision maker. I'm told that it's normal to keep a warm body decision maker in the command center. Why? Because sometimes you got to make a decision right away on how to do something, and you need them there. They didn't have anybody there. Not to mention, all the other weird failures. I mean, this guy Crook shows up and he's got a drone, and he's running a drone over the area. And Secret Service was offered drones and rejected drones. I mean, this thing here is what Mike Lee has suggested. He said this isn't attempted murder overtly. What it is it's willful negligence, and that's the question that we are trying to get to the bottom of. But just the circumstances and situations smell very, very bad.
Yeah, it sure does. Wow, so many unanswered questions. Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you for joining us. Really important information. Thank you so much. We love having you on.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you so much. And everybody stick with us here on Katz and Cosby. Bruce Blakeman, who was at the Trump rally, the big one last night. He's going to talk about that and a whole bunch more right after the break.
Larry Kudlow here with an urgent warning. Washington is coming for your savings to pay for their spending mistakes. That's why thousands of Americans are shielding their savings with gold. For a free 2024 gold guide that explains everything you need to know, please go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908. That's 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide and learn if you qualify for up to $7,500 in free silver now.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Wow, wow, wow. Tony Carbonetti continues with us. Of course, he was chief of staff to then the mayor of New York, the great Rudy Giuliani. And, Tony, we just heard a wow there from Andy Biggs, Congressman Andy Biggs, saying that an active duty senior Department of Homeland Security official has told him that 3 countries have essentially assassination teams in this country, and they're also domestic ones, trying to target President Trump right now. That is frightening.
It's very sad. And like I was just saying, if 2 amateurs can get as far as they did, it worries you what professionals can do.
Yeah, that is true. And you think about how close he came in Butler. It nicked his ear. You think about in Florida, the guy was waiting and, he would have been within 25 to 50 yards of him if he walked up to the next hole. I mean, this is scary
Rita,
stuff.
It bothers me because, 20 years ago, I used to sit in briefings from the NYPD when the Pope was coming to town, and they were amazing. They seemed like they were prepared for everything.
Yeah, and now look at what we're seeing.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, let's go to KT McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump. KT, this is a wow, what we just heard from Andy Biggs that he was just briefed on. Your thoughts about just how dangerous this time is?
If the President of the United States does not direct the United States Secret Service to give former President Trump presidential level protection, then he is complicit in whatever happens next. There are lots of levels of Secret Service protection. The highest level is what the President of the United States has. Former presidents, former officials, even current mid-level officials. It's nothing like what the President of the United States has. And at this point, it's pretty clear that a lot of guns are aimed at Donald Trump. And unless the United States Secret Service ups the ante, and they'll have to do it at the direction of the president because they'll need more resources, President Trump will remain a target every single minute of every single day.
It's amazing. I think about this, KT. Think about if it had been, if this had happened 5, 10, whatever years ago, and there had been an assassination attempt, one of them against a former president, potentially future president, the whole world would be going crazy. Everybody, it would be bipartisan. It would be an American outrage. Where is our president? Why isn't he pounding his fist and saying, my goodness, look at all the threats against this president? And today we have the Supreme Court finding out that 6 justices were threatened, them and their families. Guess what? There's 6 conservative justices. You can figure out what's going on. The guy was a Democratic donor. Where is the outrage? And why isn't Kamala Harris pounding her fist? This is really, to me, it's like you said, it's complicit.
1/4 of Democrats think that Donald Trump should be assassinated, according to a latest poll. So they're answering to their own voters. And why are those people thinking Donald Trump should be assassinated? It's because these guys, the rhetoric that's coming out of the president, the vice president, all the people around them, is either look the other way or, Donald Trump must be stopped. I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been on the Upper East Side of Manhattan where people say openly, Donald Trump must be stopped at any cost. Now, are they calling for the assassination? Are they fundraising for assassins to go after President Trump? No, but they're blowing a lot of dog whistles. And unless the senior leadership of the United States government, and it starts at the White House and it's in Congress and everybody else, including the media, should be out and doing what you're saying, Rita. They should be screaming at the top of their lungs. This is wrong.
Isn't Biden supposed to be stepping into that elder statesman role now? Where is he?
We don't know where he is. I mean, nobody's written it on the teleprompter.
Right.
So
I don't think he knows where he is.
Write it up and have him read it.
Disgusting. Really scary stuff. Before we let you go, KT, I want to ask you also about Israel, because we're hearing now that Israel is striking areas in Iran. And of course, this comes after those. That was unbelievable. It was like a scene out of a movie. The pagers going off, the walkie-talkies going off. And now we have the UN with, of course, the big UN week coming up, KT, as you know all too well. But they're blasting Israel, saying, this is not appropriate. Are you kidding me? They targeted Hezbollah terrorists.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same mentality that says the assassination attempts against Donald Trump are Donald Trump's fault. Israel shouldn't defend itself because to defend itself, it has to kill people who are killing it. And, that's Israel's fault. Look, Israel's just done something really significant in the last 48 hours. Number one, they've probably done a really major, a hole in Hezbollah, because all of those 4,000, who knows how many really, 4,000 or 5,000 fighters have been either disabled or they're scared to death or they're never going to pick up a communications device again. The other thing they've done is it's like a psychological blow. Think of where people put their cell phones and their pagers. And the guys put them in their back pockets, their front pockets. When an explosion goes off, what happens? I mean, for a macho society like the Muslim world, and especially the terrorist fighters that they think they're tough guys. I mean, to hit them at that part of the body, that's a psychological blow. And the other thing that really struck me is that these weapons that they're using, and they are weapons, the cyber weapons are done without the United States cooperation, participation, or assistance. So Israel is showing that it can do what it needs to do without the help of the United States. So President Biden, Kamala Harris, they can slow walk all the weapons deliveries they want to punish Israel. But Israel's figuring out a way to defend itself by itself.
Yeah, Israel's sadly realizing that they can't count this administration to have their back, and that's really sad. Boy, oh boy. And she keeps vacillating, you see, all over the place about Israel. It's a scary place, I think, for Israel and for the world. KT, thank you. It's great to have you here. KT McFarland, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And now let's go to our big headlines.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
Well, Israel is now striking areas in Lebanon, as we just talked about with KT. The strikes come 2 days after the pagers first went off, and 1 day after the walkie-talkies, of course, belonging to the group Hezbollah, exploded, killing at least a dozen and wounding thousands. And also, following last night's big Trump rally on Long Island, former President Trump planned to visit a kosher deli in Brooklyn, but it was canceled following the owner's sudden death. He had not been in good health for the last few days. Trump, however, is heading to Washington, D.C. The Israeli-American Council's National Summit is taking place today, where Professor Dershowitz was en route to. Vice President Harris is conducting a live stream this evening along with Oprah Winfrey. And coming up after the break, we will have Bruce Blakeman, who was at the big Trump rally last night. He'll fill us in on all of that.
There are black beans, and then there are Goya black beans. Whole, plump, delicious, and loved by all kinds of chefs. The professional chefs at Chef's Best love them so much, they awarded our beans their Excellence Award. At Home Chefs love them so much, they awarded our beans the internationally acclaimed Goya black beans. Whole, plump, and oh so delicious. Find them in the Goya section of your local grocery store. If it's Goya, it has to be good.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Rita Cosby continuing with Tony Carbonetti, former chief of staff for Rudy Giuliani. And our next guest got enormous shout-outs last night at the enormous and absolutely packed Nassau Coliseum on Long Island. Wow, wow, wow. 16 to 17,000 people, about that and more, waiting outside to see President Trump. And joining us now is Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman. Bruce, your name must have been shouted out with kudos from the president and everybody else. I don't know, like 20, 30 times. You were the hero of the night, Bruce.
Well, listen, I really appreciate it, but it was really Donald Trump's night. Think about the fact that the place was completely packed, and President Trump told me last night that he talked to one of the longtime employees that had been there back in the heyday of the Islanders, when the Islanders were winning 4 Stanley Cups in a row, and he said he never heard it so loud. And I agree. I mean, it was like a Game 7 atmosphere of a basketball game or a football game or the World Series. It was deafening, the amount of enthusiasm when President Trump walked out. It was electric. And I like to say that it was Woodstock, Nassau County style. Peace, love, and Donald Trump.
Yeah, and by the way, he also, he had a lot of substantive things to say, too. He called himself the border president last night, Bruce Blakeman, and the crowd went crazy. And then he said Kamala Harris is the invasion president. But he talked a lot about issues that really matter to New York and the country. I mean, crime, immigration. What were some of the big things that you thought really resonated? Because, boy, they were just chanting USA or Trump come back to the White House 2024. I mean, it must have been electric.
One of the things that resonated with me was what he said directly to the African American, Caribbean American communities, the Latinos, the Hispanic Americans. He talked about life in urban centers, life in big cities like New York City now, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Minneapolis. And he talked about the fact, what do you got to lose in voting for me? You've seen what Democratic leadership has failed to do for you. You have higher grocery prices, higher gasoline prices. You have migrants invading your neighborhoods. There's crime. Your schools are overcrowded. What have you got to lose? Give me a chance. I thought that resonated.
Bruce, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and he's right.
He's 100% right, because what he's saying is you've been doing the same thing for years and you're not happy with it. So why not try something new? And I agree with him.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a great message. The other themes that he struck, I think, were fantastic, but this was a different tact. He knows that he's doing better in the African American community than Joe Biden did. Rather than he's doing much better than he did last time against Joe Biden. And Kamala Harris is not getting the minority voters that she thought she would get because she's so disingenuous. She says whatever, would please the crowd that she's in front of, almost oblivious to the fact that people have phones now. They videotape what you say. So she'll say one thing in one community that she's vehemently against fracking, and then she'll go to Pennsylvania and say, well, you know what, I would consider fracking. That's just one example of how disingenuous she is.
Bruce Blakeman, too, Nassau County Executive. Obviously, New York is also pivotal, especially for maintaining, you think about the House. And also, you look at the Senate. I mean, there's so many layers to it, but especially the House. And there were a number of House members there last night that also got shout outs. I saw Mark Molinaro, Nick LaLota, Anthony D'Esposito, Nick Langworthy, Claudia Tenney, just to name a few, and a number of the other candidates, too, that are running. How pivotal is New York? Because that red wave really sealed it to have a Republican House Speaker. And think about all the investigations that have gone on, all the details that we know about the Biden family and even on the border, so many of these things. None of that would have happened if it was a Democratic
House.
House.
Come to a stop.
Oh, absolutely. So keeping the majority in the House of Representatives and gaining a majority in the Senate is a very, very important thing that we need to concentrate on, as well as the president. And I think the president's trip here is going to help Anthony D'Esposito because it's going to rally the troops. I think it's going to help Nicole Maliotakis. It's going to help Mike Lawler. It's going to help all of the candidates that are running this year in New York State because he's really, really trying to run a campaign here in New York State. We haven't seen a Republican campaign for president in New York State since Ronald Reagan. And guess what? When he ran a campaign here, he won twice.
So you're promising Reagan 84 numbers? Is that what you said, Bruce?
Yes, yeah. Is this Tony?
We'd love to see it.
Hey, Tony, I was with your old boss, Rudy, last night. He was really good.
He called me today. He said he had a great time.
Yeah, he got a big applause. Huge applause.
He said he had a great time.
So, wait, but Bruce, you didn't answer Tony's question.
Right,
Are
we
you
need
promising?
Reagan 84 numbers.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes, I do think we're going to get 84 numbers. I think Donald Trump has a real good chance to win New York State. And even though the demographics have gotten worse since 1988, some of those demographics, Hispanic voters, Latino voters, African-American voters, they're fed up. They're fed up with far-left Democratic policies that make them worse off. So basically, I think that New York is in play. It's not like California. Donald Trump is behind probably over 20 points in California because they're just nuts there. But people here,
they're true believers in their craziness.
And they're crazy, absolutely. But the New Yorkers, they are pretty common sense people, and they want to be normal again. And that includes every community, and that includes every region, whether it be rural, urban, or suburban. So, I told Donald Trump, I said, this race is going to be won or lost in the suburbs. You have a suburban message. You want to get back to American values. You want to lower gas prices, grocery prices. You want to lower crime. You want to stop the invasion of our southern border.
Yep.
So you have the message that resonates with suburban voters in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Charlotte, Atlanta. You go through the list of cities. Those suburbs are craving for Donald Trump's leadership.
Yeah, everybody wants safety. I thought one of the best examples was when last night he was talking, he was like, when I was a young kid, I was on the subway, Trump was saying, and it was fine. And now you need a Kevlar vest. It's like, and talk about a contrast. Bruce Blakeman, thank you. How lucky for you to have a front row seat there. And also kudos and great comments there. But awesome rally. I was watching the whole thing. It was fantastic, Bruce.
Well,
Bruce, come on back on and tell us how you're going to pull that vote out.
You got it. Fight, fight, fight.
Exactly. Thanks, Bruce.
And joining us now here on Cats and Cosby is Joe Contra, Fox News contributor, also the author of an awesome best-selling book, Progressively Worse. Joe, it's incredible. even after the second assassination attempt. There was a new report that just came out. 95% negative coverage of Trump on ABC, CBS, NBC. That is amazing.
Because you had it coming, right? That's what we hear from Lester Holt and Norah O'Donnell, Rita, right? Where they say, Trump's rhetoric actually led to him getting shot. I mean, it's just insane the way they're covering this. And now the whole assassination attempt has basically been memory hold. That was only, 4 days ago? And it's already like, oh, well, USA Today didn't even have coverage of it in its front page the next day. Like, this is the new normal. Oh, well, they missed Trump again. I guess we'll just move on now. It's a broken, corrupt media. I can't even describe how horrifying the last couple of months have been in terms of coverage and trying to get Kamala Harris over the finish line. And yet, with all this positive coverage that she's received, Trump right now, the way I see it, and in some of the polls that are coming out today, is still the odds-on favorite to win.
Yeah, it's amazing because you're right. They're also seeing the very few interviews she's done. And Joe Concha, have you ever seen on the flip side? It is like a broken record. I've never seen someone repeat the same thing. Well, I worked at McDonald's or my neighbor has a lawn. I'm thinking that wasn't the question. It's astounding that so far she really still has gotten a free pass, but the American public sees what we see.
But precisely. I mean, if she has to explain that she was raised in a middle-class family one more time when she wasn't, by the way, that's a lie. Also, lived in some pretty nice apartments up in Toronto, Canada. But again, that's the answer. It reminds me of John Kasich when he used to say over and over again that his father was a postal worker. Okay, that's great. But you got to get to some substance at one point, because at this point it's all foam and no beer. And Rita, she sounds like somebody, like a sophomore who's trying to get to the minimum time limit of a verbal book report. Like, she just wants to stall her way through the answer without actually answering it. And at some point, people are going to be hearing this and saying, wait a minute, this woman never ran a lemonade stand. And now we expect her to run the U.S. economy when she can't explain to us a very simple question. How are you going to lower the cost of things that people buy every day? And, oh, by the way, you're responsible for as the vice president of the last 3.5 years. The fact that she still doesn't have some sort of answer memorized, because she's an actress, let's face it, so you just wind her up, program her, and have her go out and say whatever she's programmed to say. The fact that she can't even still answer that question, I think that's why Trump, again, when people compare their lives under Trump 2017 to 2020 before COVID and what they've experienced over the last 3.5 years, if it's that binary choice that people go into a ballot box and they don't know who they're going to vote for yet, Trump wins that battle 7 times out of 10.
It's amazing, Joe Concha. She is on track. Her and Waltz on pace to do the least interviews in modern times for any presidential nominee. When you look at the two of them combined, I think it's Trump, Vance, 55 interviews, Harris, Waltz, 14. She only did that one solo, because she had her comfort animal for the other one, remember? But, when you look at it, and there's Trump. Trump does the rally. He's talking extemporaneously last night in Long Island. He did Gutfeld last night. He was very funny, very seamless. What a contrast. Do you think we're ever going to... She hasn't done a news conference yet. It's astounding.
Yeah, I know. The big stat is Trump and Vance combined have done 15 press conferences since she became the nominee, and Harris and Walz have done 0.0. And as sure as death taxes and the Giants not making the playoffs this year, I can guarantee you they will not hold a press conference before this election, Rita, because it's not a controlled environment. It's not the NABJ where she was yesterday, where she got T-ball questions like you would not believe. And then obviously she won't have the ABC News moderators there to save her when those moderators were probably under orders from the ABC News president, who's best friends with Kamala Harris, not to challenge her in any way, shape, or form. Don't ask about Joe Biden's health issues. Only ask one question on the economy and do all the fact checks on Trump and not her. If she doesn't have those advantages, then she's toast. And so that's the calculation, that they're going to keep her. They're basically going to plead the fifth, Rita, until Election Day, hoping they could sneak her in and nobody notices that she's basically all foam and no beer at this point.
And Joe, before I let you go, can you believe ABC News, Martha Raddatz the other day was saying, wait a minute, there actually was a mistake made by Kamala in the debate when she said we don't have troops in a combat zone. She's like, what about the guys in Syria? What about the guys in Iraq? Now they're doing the fact checking. It's a little too late.
A fraction of the audience watching whatever Martha Raddatz was on that particular night with that fact check. Meanwhile, 60, 70 million people saw her get away with one of the biggest lies of that debate, where she says that we have no active military members in war zones. We literally had troops killed in the Red Sea earlier this year. And the fact that we have 900 in Syria, 2,500 in Iraq, that's a lot of troops. She lied again, just like she lied about Trump's, he's going to ban abortion nationally. No, he's not. He's going to ban IVF. No, he's not. I inherited a horrible economy. No, you didn't. I mean, I think I counted 23 lies that she wasn't fact-checked on. But I think you could only get so far with this strategy, Brita. And I just feel things are turning now at this point. And unless she shows she's actually a good candidate, and she's a horrible candidate, I think this is her election. She's definitely the underdog. We'll put it that way.
Joe Concha, thank you so much for joining us. We love you. Thank you. Joe, thanks so much. Wow. Did you hear Tony Carbonetti was here in studio with me? 95% negative coverage of Trump from the three main networks after the assassination attempt, the latest one.
I want to hear the 5% good stories. I mean, what could they possibly be? I'm trying to think. I'm hurting my head thinking about it.
Yeah, where are the 5%? Yeah, we haven't seen that.
That guy got fired.
Yeah, exactly. Right. How dare he, right? Anyway, coming up, everybody, here on Katz and Cosby, Al D'Amato, the greatest former senator of New York ever. He's coming up. He was at the big rally last night.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Huge rally last night for former President Trump. And joining us is someone who was there and said his speech was a blockbuster, is the greatest New York Senator, Al D'Amato. Take it away.
The best speech I ever heard Donald Trump give. It was fabulous from the beginning to the end. For an hour and a half, he kept the people in rapture, and he hit the points. He sorted out. I will secure the border, and I will bring criminal prosecutions against those who have been committing these crimes. He was terrific. And he talked about, I will reduce the cost of living for our people, our citizens. We will drill, baby, drill. We will become energy independent in the next year and bring the cost of living down. And by the way, just think about this. If your energy cost goes down, it means not only buying gasoline, running your cars, but all the businesses that do, the heating of our homes, the running of our businesses, bring the cost of living down for the American people and create a climate where our communities become safe. And then he talked about deporting those who should be deported. And he's right. Look at what's happened to our cities. It's incredible. And what do you have taking place? You have people who come in here, many of them, people of terrible backgrounds, some criminals, and we are feeding them, housing them, clothing at the expense of our taxpayers. Look at the city of New York. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year, billions of dollars being spent by hardworking taxpayers.
And guess what? And Senator, too, no money for veterans. Like it seems like homeless veterans are saying, what about us?
Homeless Americans, veterans included. And what are we doing? We're housing. We're taking care of. We're giving them credit cards. This is incredible. But
Senator, it's Tony Carbonetti.
It's Tony Carbonetti.
I have a question. What you saw last night, you were there in 1984.
Yep.
When Reagan had that huge victory.
Yes.
What you saw last night, can it happen again?
Yes, it can. I want to tell you, I think you're going to see the battleground states swing to Trump. He's getting stronger and stronger. Kamala Harris has nothing but a lot of money. They buy lots of ads. They're trying to buy their voters. And you know what I mean by that. And it's not going to work. It's stalled. She got a bump in the beginning, but it has stalled. And Trump, if he stays on message like he did last night, he runs away with this election.
Well,
I'm telling you.
Tell us, Senator, too, because you were there. What was the reaction from the crowd? Was the crowd going crazy? It looked like it was like, wow, and packed outside.
He had them mesmerized for an hour and a half. And I was mesmerized. He was never better. And I spoke to him last night. I said, you know what you have to do. Stick on the issues. Stick on the border. Stick on what you're going to do to make this country energy independent, to get the costs down for people so that they can live here again with some dignity and not be in poverty. And let me tell you, he did it. He hit a grand slam home run. And I tell you, I don't think he's going to carry New York, but he's going to run a heck of a lot stronger. He's going to help the Republicans who are running for Congress. We've got 4 tough battle seats where we have incumbent Republicans. I think they're all going to win. 3 of them in Long Island. Anthony D'Esposito. Trump's presence helped the whole ticket in New York. And I have to tell you, if you can get to that, you can. It's been recorded an hour and a half. It's worthwhile getting it and watching it.
Oh, yeah. I watched it live. And I was cheering when they said Al D'Amato, when he said the great New York. We heard that one. That was terrific. Well, Senator, it is so great to have you here. We love having you here on the show. And,
Thank you, Senator.
And we loved hearing you get a big, big shout out. The whole world heard that last night. It was great.
Great being with you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
America, we're going to survive and thrive and save this nation and the world.
Yeah, we got to. I'm telling you, we got to, because as we're hearing all this stuff of what's going on in the border, the economy, there's so many issues. Senator, it's so great to have you. The great Senator Al D'Amato. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And what do we all stand for? Truth, justice, and the American way. God save America, everybody.